folks who are dying and living at the same time, but are ill and they see it coming. But then they also perceptively see that dying and living are intertwined. Not only a future event called death, but that dying and living are in fact, and sometimes
who are dying and living at the same time, but are ill and
intertwined. But then, and then you could see where it's leaning this way or that way, and you become aware of a process that's always been going on in your life on many levels. And that the body has been processing this living and dying process. Somehow you become aware of that process only when something happens to you, and you then have to come back into the story from a different place. And you see that the living and dying process, once perceived, is almost like a prayer is happening in your body, or a conversation that has that you visit only occasionally, because in order to visit it deeply, it transforms your life. One must be in a state themselves. So usually the state for the self is to avoid that conversation that's happening.
Yeah.
And to continue to survive. So to make it as if God helps you, or God does this, or like a helper to get a good job, to do this, you understand. But to perceive it as an energy is that I may be in trouble at one moment, and then I remember my mother who passed away mentioning something that applies in this moment.
Yes.
And so you see how I'm able to drift into past lives, future lives, situations, draw on it through certain experiences, through memory or whatever. And what is this memory that we're talking about? That I can remember someone I lived with and passed away, and still somehow there is a feeling of existence and non-existence that you may carry quietly or privately in yourself. So then what is this knowable human being when there is existing on so many levels? And when it starts to make a life consciously around those other levels that are hidden, then it becomes a maverick in the real world, because the real world supposedly is literally you earn a living, you have a job, you do this, and you continue your life as an identity. But then you discover another world, which is more of a creative world, where identity is more the Uber driver, not so much the owner of the story. So that one utilizes identity when necessary, but what is not owned by the identity. So it's extremely challenging. But events happen that cause a deep soulful reflection. And in the soulful reflection, it reveals another dimension of one's life. Having had that experience, one comes back with a bit of that experience into their regular life. I feel for what happens for me, that once one has that experience and returns to the life, there's situations waiting in the world that are yet to happen for you. And so that's what I mentioned when I came back after that conversation with Dr. Kaushik in India.
Yeah.
And then came home and knocked on my door, and I saw that life had moved on. And I had expected a literal home and a literal situation.
Right.
You know. But then I didn't see that what I was looking for, they also were looking for.
Yes.
Understand? So then you had to recognize a joke that somehow you can be in flux and the world is structured. So when I returned to a situation, I noticed then a transformation in myself, because I understood a year before I would have resisted what I saw in front of me, which was just obviously life had moved on. Life had moved on, and you make your peace with it. And peace meaning that you're looking at how you guys doing. Is everything okay? Okay, I'll pick up a jacket and a pair of shoes and
Mm,
Impossible conversation
yeah.
you could ever imagine, where you lost your life in front of you and you're talking to it as if, okay, I'll just pick up a pair of sneakers. So it would seem the dumbest. And yet to me, the thinking or the seeing that one came back with released the story from a possessive.
Hmm.
And in fact, thank God it passed on without me, without an incident,
Right.
without an explosion, without an argument, without a fight. Just, I wish
Mm,
you well and take care or whatever. And somehow you had the naive sense that the energy or the feeling took care.
mm,
And friends did come up in that moment and look out for, and you saw a milieu that you moved in. That once something happened for you, that became the situation that you were in. And so then you were moving in a kind of framework that released the story from its history, and you came back to a new place. Yet it was the same old place, but it was a new place. But you were also free to meet, fall in love. You were free somehow to exist without having to be a sneak about it, without having to hide about it. And that's what I was also discussing with someone today when I realized that my father just decided to pass, and decided to stop eating in that nursing home there.
yeah.
But then when I met him at the bed, and my son was sitting there, his grandson, named after him, that there was a recognition that it wasn't up in the air or fighting or killing or anything like that. It was, in fact, a conscious act of looking out for the life or caring for the life. And that there must have been a few people who, in friendship, looked out for each other who were in that situation. And who did not want to hide or be sneaks or hide something about something that was very spiritual to them, the ability to be freely, to die consciously, to live consciously, that there were not contradictions, but there was a conscious sense of being human. And so then that was a relationship, I guess, that folks would have with a continual a question of treatment forever or this or that they,
Yeah.
and it's not a freak out or a need to freak out or fear. It is that you become aware that you are caring for something. It's not spelled out normally the way things are, where it's literalized, but somehow it exists on many levels, that an intuitive element is one connection to it. So let's say you, like Janet, are navigating your way through this literal world of virus and still keeping a human element in it. And kind of owning where you stand with it and what's happening for you, but you're doing your research, and as she is. So let's say there's you left a corresponding energy here that Janet is also jumped. So Janet is you here in some way, and reflects that keeping it human, keeping it natural in some way. Is Now, whether it literalizes or doesn't literalize, that's why I sense when I enter into the literal zone, then Mary, hey baby, is the invitation into a literal world where I assume the identity of someone who's being cared for really by someone, where I don't then have to literally make decisions, which I'm probably not going to do anyway in many of the cases. So we'll say without Mary, then I say, okay, you want to go to the doctor today? There's an appointment. They say maybe next week or next month, or. So I don't know. For me, that is a philosophy, not some dumb idea of putting things off.
Yeah.
But it is a way of giving my body a chance to do what say maybe next week, and maybe my body will kind of reconcile. I don't say that literally, but I do feel that a kind of natural process may need some time to play with. And I say, why? I say, because once it's literalized in the office or the medical office, when there's a process going on here, it's a literal thing happening there. So we were discussing that this morning when there was a process of dying happening in the body with the diagnosis for this person. And yet at the same time, we agreed, like we get around with Urja and others, that we can buy 3 years. And the 3 years is what? The 3 years is being in the journey perspective, or being in the, where you see that time is shifted. And you have, we'll say, he said, do we have 3 years? I said, okay, we'll create 3 years. It doesn't literally have to be 3 years, but you still know that there's an experience waiting for you out there. So the time that you're relating to is not literal time any longer, length of time. It's kind of evocative time or creative time. You want to complete the movie you're in by recognizing the movie that you're in, and that it's a work of art. And that it comes from that space now. Not the greed to survive, not the competition to kill the other or to do this, but that basically it comes from a whole different perspective. It's a kind of cooperative. The dialogue is you are experiencing a process happening to you that is happening to every living form. But the experience of it, when it's natural in the person, but the experience of it by seeing it deeply, by losing it and returning through it, you enter into the place with a consciousness of the life that you're living, and it's not your possessive. You see that you are caring for the life in a way. And it's the intuitive kind of caring, like a mother that would have for a child or something like that, if there was trouble there or something, where they would just share the feeling and actually share the feeling. And you see then that when it becomes a conscious exploration for you, you are consciously sharing the feelings of those that you're sharing life with. And it's very much as if you can see a child hurt or something, or even a pet suffering or something. You share a feeling, and that shared feeling allows you an access. Oh, hello there, Kerry. Can you hear?
Yeah, hi, Denny.
Okay. How are you doing? How's your virus information now? Did you take another test?
Yeah, it's still positive.
Positive. That's why you're wearing the sunglasses.
Yeah, I'm not fit for prime time right now.
Are you feeling it?
Oh yeah, it's pretty intense. No taste, no smell, fevers, chills, headaches.
Didn't you get the vaccine?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I had the Moderna.
You got the Moderna double shot?
Yeah.
Well, while John was alive.
Yeah.
Was that to take care of John?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, the Moderna, and you're feeling out of it?
Yeah. Pretty. It comes and goes, but it's been really intense. Very intense.
Yeah. So, well, Urja had, something similar to you, where she had the, I don't know if she got the virus first, and then, yeah. But basically, let's say this virus is no slouch.
No.
It's also learning. It's learning a lot. Like what they said about penicillin, that although penicillin helped a lot in the beginning, then it became a problem in its own right, because then the things became superior. The bacterial treatments then could not contain the kind of infections that came out of it. But in other words, they don't just die, they come back stronger, learning what you've done to them. So they've learned your approaches and stuff like that. And so they seem to be able to adopt and adapt to your practices, just like any living force.
Hmm.
Just as if you go outside, you could see the animals adapt to your presence. They'll fly away, the
Yeah.
birds, whatever. So we are in the midst of living forces ourselves. But somehow, so then I guess we'll see what happens here. If any of us, anybody have symptoms yet?
Not yet.
I had a feeling that I probably got it on my way through Arizona is my guess based on the timing, but it was just a feeling. I'm not sure.
Well, we'll see what happens with Derek and have you spoken to Hillary about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's okay.
Yeah. So far, everybody, even Kat, when I came back here, I was pretty close with Kat, and my ex too. Nobody that I know of is feeling anything, so that's good.
Well, you have your own. It looks like you've own your own specific version.
Yeah.
That somehow it was more like a lover found you somehow. Somehow you found this version that applies only to you.
I needed some more pain in my life, I think.
Aw.
Okay, so then use the pain to sing to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You could say to your body, "I'm sorry, baby."
Yeah.
Your body, I'll try looking out for you now. Thanks, virus, for making me it's going to make my music deeper now.
Yeah.
Because now I've come to, you just came out of here. We just had a weird time here, all of us together, didn't we?
That was a great time. Yeah.
Yeah. And with segue thrown in to the fray, so it was pretty, it was actually, and then all of that pruning and planting and scratching out there in the earth,
Yeah.
around the plants. So it seems to me it was an immersive.
Yeah.
What happens with Derek and Joan if they come up with anything. They're
Yeah.
still on their way back, I think.
Okay.
But are you getting treatment for it now? Did you see a doctor for it, or you go anywhere?
No, I've just been isolating in the house, and Kat's away with her boyfriend, so I've just been, just drinking fluids and.
You just want to stick it out. They're agreeing to have you hanging around.
Yeah, I just have the house to myself here, so that's working for now.
So you'll stick it out then.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're staying stoned.
No, I mean I feel stoned off the virus.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty foggy.
Is it like the flu?
Yeah, it's kind of like the flu. It's the no taste, no smell is very weird.
That is very weird. You should get some nice, maybe vetiver or some of those sniffers.
Okay.
Or even in the health food store, the ones from, the ones I gave you last time. Yoga sniffer. It's a neti stick.
Oh yeah, I think you gave Kat one.
I think it's $4 in the health food store.
Okay.
But that you used to see. In fact, you use that as a COVID test. Whoa, I'm online. Oh, can you come here for a minute? That was segue. With a mask and a hoodie and a and a hat and a.
Did the dogs not recognize him?
Well, I didn't recognize nobody. Right? Look at him. Nobody.
Very suspicious.
Hey. It just looked like a floating thing with a mask coming.
I like to wear the nude colored sweatshirts, so I look naked from a distance.
So then he is positive for the virus. Then yeah, we're online with everyone for the world. Okay, everyone out there, Carrie does have the virus, and he did visit here. But so far, okay, so far here, we think. But maybe we should take some tests ourselves.
Well, let's see if we have, nobody has a fever.
Yeah, no, certainly. But if Kai got a test, then we should get some. We have some tests here anyway. But you have to put it in your nose, right?
Yeah.
It's not bad.
I got to do it myself though, which was really, I went up to CVS drive-through and they just had me do it myself. It was really easy.
Not too bad.
So you think you'll do okay, or what's happening?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the worst was kind of more mentally at first for me, of just kind of being with it and just being with it physically.
Look, Kerry, I
It's
think
okay.
I think that you are up in the air in the relationship.
Yeah.
I think getting sick was a perfectly intelligent thing for you to do
Hmm.
because now the person realizes they want to care for you so much.
I don't know.
So the cat,
Taken off.
I think the virus saved you from a big argument.
I think it's been revealing in that sense. I feel like she's
No, I think it did
nowhere
come
to be
out of
seen.
it did come out as so now you have a situation where it's just pure caring for each other.
Yeah, but
No trip. No trip.
yeah, it's memory though. She's not checking in on me or anything.
No, no. But basically, I think that who would not want to care for a sick Carrie?
Apparently her.
Me, she won't buy it. Well, that's what Marty said a little bit. They didn't buy it. They didn't want to inherit you.
maybe she thinks I made it up.
Okay, but let's say, is it possible that everything is a move in the world?
I don't think so.
You don't
Maybe on
think
some level.
Look, you're normalizing a month that has been pretty remarkable for you, where
True.
the job that you had, the friendship that you had, the teacher that you had a fight with, left as a caretaker, you left, came back and found him passed
Yeah.
in a passing away state, unconscious,
Yeah.
which he never came out of until he passed away
Yeah.
fully. And that brought him to the hospital. And so you've normalized this experience. You've called me at the last moment. You've sent his ashes off okay. You've come out here and taken a trip. You've broken up with one relationship, and the other relationship is deeply in the air, in attraction and repulsion, like that. What a brilliant story!
Mm.
And out of everyone, you're the one going back who comes out with COVID after being vaccinated.
Hmm.
Shit, man.
Oh, don't forget the flood.
Are you sure that you are not producing this? Because it has all the elements of it has all the elements of a great song.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Where the virus, the lover,
Maybe a country song.
I was thinking country, but then I was thinking Leonard Cohen might be nice.
Leonard,
Yeah, that's good.
what I was listening to of Leonard Cohen again the other day is Famous Blue Raincoat.
I just listened to that, Danny.
Yeah, we listened to that here. So then the storyline was that his brother ran off with his wife to go to a retreat. So he would become clear in the desert. And he says, "Did you ever become clear?" And she brought a lock of your hair. Jane came with a lock of your hair, right? So I was listening to it and how his heart was broken that his brother ran away with his wife. And when she came back, she was nobody's wife
Yeah.
any longer. And and I also know that neighborhood that he comes from in Montreal there.
Mm.
And it was pretty hip neighborhood that we had a retreat in that neighborhood years ago. But I just heard that came back and it seemed
Yeah.
to reflect on a lot of what's happening. And I think even at the end, he went through a lot, going back with his monk teacher. I think there was a scandal with the monk or something
Hmm.
in his last days. But his life, it seemed to just reflect on, it was almost a diaristic existence, like you read from your own diary keeping,
Hmm.
as if somehow the songs you were writing or performing were prayers,
Yeah.
conversations with an audience but an abstract audience that had a similar life that was happening for them in a way that touched
Yeah.
base.
Yeah.
But they were kind of what you would say the purest prayer would be the child.
Hmm.
You know, where it's not so reward and punishment oriented, but sometimes it's
Yeah.
natural conversation. As it develops the ego sense, it loses that ability to just, unless a tragedy happens, then there seems to be an automatic, not to something, but that is current. It exists in you when there's a circumstance that awakens it,
Hmm. Yeah.
and then there's a conversation with the mystery. And again, I say the use of the idea of the mirror. I think Hermann Hesse used the idea of the mirror as a way of the thousand pieces of the mirror were all you, but none of them were literally you, but all of them were you, aspects of you.
Hmm.
But when you then look in the mirror and see a central you, not literally an identity, there are moments when you come in touch with an essential being in you that has assumed your identity. And so therefore you see what your so-called spiritual journey has been, is an attempt to get away from the karmic history,
Yeah.
where when one releases the karma of repetition, the life then is a creative act.
Yeah.
And when it's a creative act, it's having conversations with the energy, just as if it was trying to survive in a past life like that, with its own existence with. It then sees that the caring for that quality is its survival, not
Hmm.
the self as a survival.
Hmm.
Survival is caring. So when you, again, survival for you would be as if you were carrying a child,
Yeah.
or you were making sure that the child survived, not literally by living a life that was somewhat clean.
Hmm.
If you had that sense of it, you had an innate sense of protecting something.
Yeah.
I say when you have, there is an experience where you have an experience as your own being, as being that kind of pregnancy where you're caring for something that's hidden to the world,
Yeah.
but is dear to you. And so you, once that awareness comes where your own life is that child, then it's not your life or your child, it's a quality that you're caring for.
I feel like I keep looking for a lover to take care of that in me.
I know. And so you outwit yourself. In other words, there's something in you that won't let it be live with a lie. And when the person related to you sees it's a lie, they won't be able, they'll have their own version. Maybe someone will throw something at you. Maybe there'll be honest conversations. But basically, you set in motion a situation where, let's say, John was your measure. When it was true, it existed. When you became a job, then it didn't exist.
Yeah.
And then you can see it can become violent when it didn't exist. So you also understand that you're getting a reflection of who you are and what's happening for you.
Yeah.
So you're talking about a place. The breakups now are sending you to a place,
Yeah.
and they're not logical breakups. They're breakups that are coming out of something that people are intuiting or structurally not wanting to go that far with you.
Hmm.
And they say, why? Because you split.
Huh.
And I say, no, but you have to have the right as an actor, as a creator, to be able, if the thing doesn't speak to you, you don't have to be a sneak about splitting and say, I'll catch it. But no, you have complex situations when you split.
Yeah.
That there's, you split and it creates so let's say you're in the neighborhood of a broken heart.
Hmm.
That is not just relationships, but they're wanting the relationships to be deeply true.
Yeah.
And so there's a fear in it because wanting the relationship to be true is not like the other relationships of wanting a good time, wanting a partner, wanting to survive. It's not wanting a partner, it's wanting it to be true deeply.
Yeah.
And so it seems to me that you're a teacher. And so whether it's literally you have something to teach, but your presence is a teacher, a reflection.
Mm.
So they want from you what you want from them.
Mm-hmm.
And it would seem to me that the issues that will happen are pretty accurate.
Mm.
Not the issues themselves, but they're kind of reflecting what the situation is. It doesn't
Yeah.
merge there.
Right.
I see. So it's I understand all the hurts that come and the affections that come out of that are experiences that are necessary for the art of the journey.
Mm.
That you're almost as if you were an artist, that there were certain experiences that will allow you to get past the literal in the art and capture the soul of it in some way or be with the soul of it. And
Yeah.
understanding that there's a hurt that runs through the story and that people that you've connected with intimately, it's because there's a hurt in their life.
Yeah.
And so somehow, and the hurt is not only a psychological thing that can be talked out of, it's almost a holy thing.
Yeah.
It can't be bullshitted, psychologicalized, done anything to it because it's not a flaw. It is accurate. There is a hurt.
Yeah.
And to be getting rid of the hurt while there is a hurt is not to understand that there's a thing hidden behind the hurt that is not around making your life better or something like that, but is a kind of re-entering the story from a different place where it's soulful means that it's not owned by the self or its history any longer, but somehow it's released.
Yeah.
So you're not talking about love relationships, you're talking about teachings
Yeah.
and the love relationships that come out of teaching.
Yeah.
Now, for 1,000 years, they've been trying to figure out how to have a relationship with God or the energy, and also have a relationship to the world.
Right.
See how they've screwed it up with all these rules and regulations.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Although if you went into any of the monasteries, you understood immediately what was happening.
Mm.
And if you even went into the Tibetan monasteries,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of understood that they were organized into an experience with each other.
Mm.
And you see, it was missing an honest conversation. They say, "Hey, fellows, what do you do with the sexual aspect of your life then, if in fact you're not living that other life, and
Yeah.
and you're making love with Jesus then, or you're in love with Jesus?" So they say, it's not out there for the public to talk about. It's like asking what happens in prison
Right.
when you've got 1,000 people in prison and there is no lovemaking. And then they said, I think there's more lovemaking in the prison than there is in the neighborhoods around it. Except I wouldn't call it lovemaking. It's pretty weird kind of thing that you have
Yeah.
to. Okay. And sometimes you think that someone needs help when in fact they're happy with the
Mm.
situation that they're in. And so it's only you that thinks it's weird. It's normalized.
Yeah.
So let's say whenever a person sees, they walk into holy shit situations
Right.
where what looks like a love making is in fact you thought it was beating up and kicking and doing all this,
Mm.
and you tried to save the person from it, and then the person who was being beaten started to beat you up because they were
Yeah.
into it somehow. They were not victims as it appeared to the circumstance. That was you walked into a
Right.
porno movie or something where okay, but you thought that it was really shitty.
Yeah.
And you thought it was shitty because it was shitty in a way.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah.
because something that would have kind of been violating for you, not because of your belief system or whatever, but there was something sacred in the lovemaking.
Right.
And even if, however people may relate to it psychologically, hang up this way, if it comes from a different place, now I say, what is the difference? Is that when it's spiritualized, it's then by perception, then the lovemaking is truly lovemaking. It is not because there's a need or hurt or
Mm.
wound or this or that happened to you. And
Yeah.
so you meet the essence of the lovemaking, which is to be in love.
Right.
And then when the people are actually in love, it's not such a psychological thing that they're in for that moment. It's a
Yeah.
shared experience.
Yeah.
I think even if it breaks up, the shared experience lives on in some way,
Yeah.
in memory. And you may meet it in memory. Whenever there was an actual shared experience and then it breaks over the literalness of a circumstance and the feeling is lost, it's parallel with you. So I feel that there's a meeting in time
Mm.
that happens where there's a hey
Yeah.
baby, or how you're doing or whatever, and it just releases the story. And that's what seemed to happen with John's passing. It just released the story
Yeah.
and seeing what actually happened,
Yeah.
you know, and seeing what's happening, that somehow there was a creative milieu that everyone who interacted there then created their own expression,
Right.
or in the midst of creating their own expression. So it was a meeting of people whose lives were itself creative,
Yeah.
you know, that were in flux. And I guess it's a meeting of unemployed people, 1,000 unemployed people, maybe 1,000 unemployable people.
Yeah. Few maybe well off, but still unemployable.
Well off,
Right.
not well off. Employment is almost a movie you were in.
Right.
So let's say that you seem to have stepped into a life where somehow you're teaching by your living.
Yeah.
And then you'll run into circumstance. Is that okay? Where what you're going through is almost
Yeah.
as if you had to write something and you couldn't bullshit it. You had to have the
Mm.
experience. That's why I
Yeah.
got this book out for you.
How we die. Oh yeah.
Yeah, you should reread it a bit.
I actually, yeah, I have, I
Yeah.
bought that one. I'll start reading it now that I have some time.
Well, it's interesting that he was mapping how we die, and he started with his grandmother, but
Mm.
then he died
Hmm.
in a way that was pretty consistent with the research he was doing. Hmm? So this word "die" and "death" has all kinds of connotations to it. Hmm? But it does
Yeah.
seem that the literal living process, to be in the body, is to go through phases of existence.
Hmm.
And that is to first come to a kind of maturity being measured by having babies, or the body being prepared to have babies.
Yeah.
There's a phase that it prepares for that, and that the family and everything tries to organize it around that continuity. And if you see some of these films like these religious sects or whatever, where they have children, you know, as part of it, and it's organized how to do it and how it must be. Even though it may have been intuitive in a sense, at one point, the organization of it starts to become punishment oriented,
Right.
because it makes people sneaks to do something that may have come naturally to them,
Yeah.
you know, and that is to see the world. Somehow, a love affair is that you see the world, you know, in other words, you get it opens up. So it's not only a love affair literally with something, but that once you experience the world, you return to your setting from a different place.
Huh.
Not because you're confined to it, but because it's part of a happening for you. Okay, so see the world. To have that relationship with another is to see the world from a different place, a shared space. And I feel that there is a process that is going on in life that's only creative and remarkable
Mm.
in itself. And the hurts and the ups and downs. And in fact, I thought it was necessary in some biblical settings. It said that the problems were so necessary for there to be a breakthrough
Mm.
perceptively. It was almost as if the so-called problems were creatively written into the story.
Mm.
And then we've been captured this week with the incident that happened on the movie set here in town. And
Oh, that was there.
that was right about 10 miles away, about 10
Oh my
kilometers,
gosh.
5 miles away, I think. Yeah.
What
Wow.
happened?
Well, you know, the shooting on the movie set there in town.
Oh.
What's the actor again? Alan Baldwin. So Alan Baldwin was, they were doing a movie. And I think that his gun went off and killed the woman photographer
Oh, wow.
and hurt the director. So then the gun went off. They said, how could the gun be loaded? What happened there? You know, so they're still figuring it out.
Oh, crazy.
Loaded guns. And then there's some evidence today that they were practicing firing a few hours before that. And they handed him a gun. They told him it was cold. And he was practicing drawing the gun from his holster.
Hmm.
And so that's been the news all over. You haven't seen it in the news at all?
No, I haven't been paying
Oh.
So
attention.
how is a stunt gun? How can a stunt gun kill someone? I thought a stunt gun shot blanks.
Well, that's what they say. This was a real gun. And that they did find a few hundred rounds of ammunition. Now, how many were blanks and how many were actual rounds, but they don't know why rounds were there at all.
Wow.
Oh, so it's the same gun? The same gun can shoot bullets or blanks?
No, this was a real gun. But they said that the assistant director handed it to him and says it's a cold gun. So he said, but then they said it shouldn't have been the assistant director that handed it to him. There's a woman or a person that looks at the gun. They should have put a flashlight through the barrels to see, make sure there was no bullets in it, nothing in it at all, or whatever. That they, for some reason, they didn't. And then this same assistant director got busted a couple of weeks ago on another set where the gun went off and someone got wounded.
So is he,
But
wow.
they just said it was really sloppy. A lot of people quit the set. The union guys quit the set about 10 days ago, and they're
Oh.
replaced by other guys. So they don't know. But then Segway was coming here saying there's a plot. His friend worked on the set, and it may be a Trump supporter
Oh, chief.
because he does Trump on Saturday Night Live, and he has fights with Trump. So they're attempting to make a conspiracy, but so far it's not criminal yet. Because they don't know at all yet as to what happened. How could there be a bullet in the gun? And why should there be? But then they did say that they saw some of the people there practicing on the firing range there with live ammunition. So that's all over the news now. And I think they just had a news conference there.
The poor Alec Baldwin, that would be terrible.
And so he was collapsed, you know, he just apologized to the family. And she was so,
Oh my gosh.
apparently she was really pretty nice and good at her profession, but then she also had kids, and the husband came and Baldwin apologized to them, and they just had a memorial here, and in Hollywood also for them. But it's all up in the air now because he was also a producer of the show. So they said that they may have cut corners and limited expenses and stuff like that, and not oversight in the production. If they let go of the union members, they felt it wasn't safe on the, and they weren't treating them well, and they weren't paying them on time either. Or something. So a lot of things will come out, I'm sure, as to what was happening there. But for the guy, what it is now is that he was practicing drawing in a church setting. And he was practicing drawing, and when he pulled out the gun and clicked it, he shot her.
Wow.
And then the bullet went through her, and apparently it then hit the director, but it was not a bad wound there. You know. So that's all up in the air here. How could this happen? You know?
That was in Santa Fe?
Yeah, it's in Santa Fe in the movie set. There's a kind of Western movie set they have here.
Oh, okay.
You know, a few miles out of town. But everyone was there today in the news conference. You saw from all over the world they're interested in it. You saw people from newspaper people from Italy and from France. You know, they were really involved in it. And even when I spoke to someone in Italy yesterday, Louisa, she asked me about it because he's on some list. I guess he's a pretty popular actor, and not only that, but politically he was popular with this Trump thing that he does.
What
Oh,
does
yeah.
he do? Is he pro or against?
No, he imitates Trump as a fool, but he looked almost like Trump
Oh.
and on Saturday Night Live. So he goes, duh, yeah, like that. So he looks like Trump.
Mhm.
And Trump really went after him too, and calling him, all kinds of names in show business.
Oh,
So I think it was always personal. They go back to New York days when they all hated Trump. Most of the actors and who thought they was serious disliked the kind of Trump stuff. The celebrity, it was too flashy or too show offy or dumb.
Mm.
So there was a hip idea about art
yeah.
and about artists. So let's say it would be like as if Leonard Cohen sang for Trump.
No, don't.
And I would say, I don't think that it would work out that well.
That'd be weird.
Yeah. And so let's say you could understand. They say, why not? Well, and they say, well, there's a difference between them in a way. And it's, so one you think is kind of hip, and the other one you think is kind of lame. And they say, so maybe all of it's show business, but there's some that is attractive because it's reflective or soul searching or kind of deep or something like that. And the other one has like a lame scene to it. Does
Yeah.
it feel that way? That it would seem obvious,
Mhm.
but then the obviousness doesn't apply. You see that we navigate through a space. But if you hear Cohen's music, there's some soul searching, some reflection on the life that you've lived.
Yeah.
Some sorriness that I didn't do better and I should have been there or something like that. So it's not afraid of loneliness. It's not afraid of reflection or whatever. In fact, it finds a
Yeah.
dimension. In facing that dimension in its life, it finds a life of art, where the life
Yeah.
itself is art. And so then you have to study sometimes in that kind of spiritual path when your life is art. Because then it kind of, how does a person then navigate a pure, where art has an integrity of its own in it.
Hmm.
And it's not spelled out. So then I say, for me, when, depends on where the person is coming from. If it comes from a passion, I feel a space in myself that respond. But if
Mhm.
it's not true and it's a trip, I can't locate that.
Yeah.
So there's a dialogue that's going on. So the truer space is in aloneness and conversations. But then when there is a hurt, we'll say, the hurt touches you. And in that being touched, there's a shared experience, a shared life, a shared house, a shared bed, a shared this, but shared with the idea of yours and it, and that is what's the best thing manifest. All of a sudden, what is the nicest thing? What is the best thing? Not my thing, your thing, this thing, but what is the human thing?
Mm.
And it all of a sudden becomes obvious. When there's a love affair there, what's the shared thing is obviously as if it's second nature to you now. You see that there's a dormant element in your being that is awakened when something true happens for you. And you see that in the relationships that you've been discussing, it is and it isn't simultaneously.
Mhm.
But it's also reflective of what's happening for you. It is and it isn't. So you also understand that you may have a feeling for the moment now. But when you then have to commit to a literalness forever, it's like signing a contract forever. It kind of has to be true.
Yeah.
And so when it's true, it's not contractual. It understands that it's living, whatever the landlord wants you to do, is it, if you pass away before the lease is over, is that a violation of law? Or do they still come after? Okay, so let's say there is a living human reality, and then there's what the landlord wants and what they want. And when you become aware of your living human reality, there's an instant kind of care that grows up with you. And the care is not, it's second nature to you now. It's as if you smell something poisonous,
Mm-hmm.
your whole system reacts or responds to it. If you tasted something that's not right or whatever, or if you see a food that you can't eat or whatever, you see that this creative dialogue is going on in your life all the time. It's not that you can't do it, but
Yeah.
it violates something in you.
Right.
Without it having to be a big deal, you see when you come from the human,
Mm-hmm.
a doctor's statement that when you see a dog shit over there, you don't have an attraction to eating it or not eating it or fight with it or anything like that. You see what it is. Seeing what it is, without the seeing, you're subject to it. So let's say the life is kind of creatively forcing you to see the depth of it.
Right.
Why? Because you're in relationships that somehow have an inherent broken heart in it.
Yeah.
And somehow all the participants have an inherent broken heart. And somehow your relationship with Johnny D had a broken heart in it.
Yeah.
His ability to access certain notes in himself came from a broken heart,
Mm-hmm.
in fact, in his life. So a broken-hearted kid who had to fight forever with his father bought the broken heart, gave him a career expression, not as a job,
Yeah.
but sitting on a step somewhere singing.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, people coming near you and also wanting to share that with you. And all of a sudden, we give him Frank's apartment, and he's sitting there singing.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, he's singing this. Our lives are, it's as if you were sitting on a step somewhere outside, and someone walked past, and this happened and that happened.
Yeah.
So it looks like chance and it looks like accident, but if you saw the larger picture, you saw how remarkably crazy quilt our life has been.
Mm.
Just so that
True.
you just in the way of any plans you would have for it. You saw how it had to come across as accident or it had to be natural in some way.
Yeah.
And you see, even our relationship with the outer world in our own minds, it's not should we or shouldn't I. It's somehow it has to be natural.
Mm.
And so you can make so somehow you naturally got the virus, you naturally got the shot. You got okay.
Yeah.
You went through a dying process. You'll see where it goes now. But
Right.
you took the test twice, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Because as Marty was describing a pain that he was getting in his back, that was not like a muscle pain or something, but a kind of pain. I started to get that pain in my back also while I was on the phone. So I said,
Uh,
you dirty little, you from Pennsylvania also.
no, I'll keep this one, Danny.
I was just kidding. I said, that's okay. But it did seem like it was pretty much what he was describing was coming across my back for a while there.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, let's see the story from where we are now, and let's forget the history for a moment and all the nonsense and that we're coming from this process that we're both in. And I think that we'll put a 3-year up in the air kind of thing where you kind of ask your body, talk to your body
Yeah.
without it being so dumb. It's like talking to your, he says his ex-wife is caring for him somewhat nearby. So I said, it's like
Mm.
a conversation where a tough stage is happening. And it doesn't mean brutal conversation or in your face. It in fact means an affectionate conversation that was withheld. And
Yeah.
I feel that now it comes to your own body as if it's your lover in one sense.
Mm.
Lover doesn't mean user or this or that. It means an honesty.
Yeah.
Not brutal honesty, not any of this trip honesty, but that you know in yourself that you are making. So we figured out then how to put creatively together a 1 or 3 year situation, which I felt that I was playing with 1 year at a time now
Yeah.
in time. And where it's, then I say, well, then the purpose of our situation was that there was still in the experience a love in the story. And let's say, who would care for you in such a situation that you're in unless there was a genuineness? But whether it literalizes in form or not, you are now having a conversation with the energy. I can't literalize it as God now because God is co-opted by so many religions that have become businesses, or corporate constructs with rules. But then to become aware that there has always been, without your literally acknowledgement of it, a conversation with the mystery.
Yeah.
And I think now, in conversing with him, we were having a conversation purely of a life around the mystery. While your self was taking care of the history you were in to make sure that you were not so compelled in the literal world. You were then
Mm.
free to explore the mystery of your life. Hmm?
Mhm.
And then in exploring the mystery of your life, you started to meet others who were also in similar situations. So I feel that your life has been disenfranchised to a degree from its historical premise, and that you're traveling, you're moving, you're in flux.
Yeah.
Hmm? And that the relationships that you're having are also in flux.
Yeah.
But somehow you're caring for something. And that means when a person has a dual relationship with you, then as we were kidding around with the other guy, they have to make love is a conscious act between people where it's a merger.
Yeah.
And so that thing that comes about that says that Shiva says that he makes love when he's in love.
Yeah.
When they asked him what was celibacy for Shiva, he says that he makes love when you're in love.
Mm.
And in fact, when you are in that state, your body won't work.
Right.
It makes you into a fool.
That's true.
Somehow your body is now consciously in the story with you.
Mm.
And so then it has a relationship now with something that's genuine. In this hour, in this part of the life, the circumstance around this is so lacking in genuineness that there is a deep yearning that's running through the story.
Mm.
And that there is a question that the love affair is no longer because of for me.
Right.
Although there may be a few more love affairs left if you want to pour me, but then they'll kick you in the behind
Right.
because you can't do pour me as a philosophy that far. You then have to, okay. And I say, why? Because it's also true that someone would be attracted to you because it was something that they intuited in you.
Yeah.
But then as a literalization of it, it's not true. Your poor me expression is because it's a creative expression.
Right.
You'll sing it, you'll play it, you'll share it. You'll share what it means to be a human being navigating his life, navigating a life.
Yeah.
And navigating a life that comes out of creativity and where the love affairs come out of creativity also. So they exist and they don't exist simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
Say why? They exist creatively as soul searching and reflection, But if you attempt to literalize them and own them and possess them, there will be some event that happens, but it's because the possessive is taking place.
Yeah.
So my feeling is that somehow you're not exactly only a boyfriend, you're a teacher in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And they see that element in you. And so when that shifts, or the plane, or one needs to survive, or the survival element comes in, you want the job. It's forcing you kind of to be true, and that's not laid out for you.
Yeah.
But it's looking for a true song. And what would be a true song is that it touches another.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Yeah. That sounds like a good job for me.
When the life is a shared experience, that's what the creative element is. So when you hear something that touches you and it touched the person who made it, and so you see hidden in the creative act is a connection, a
Yeah.
human connection.
Yeah.
And when you experience it, something dissolves in the ego's separation. There's a shared experience.
Yeah.
The shared experience looking at the world from that feeling sees it as some.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Oh, there he is. We lost you for a minute, Danny.
Oh, you did. I'm sorry. I was talking about that it sees it from an affectionate space, not
Mm.
not such a survival space.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that the literal time world doesn't exist. I'm saying it's not. It exists within an expression. There's literal time that you can tell from a clock what time it is, and this and that. There's body time. There's shared time. There's creative time. So you come into a world where you see that time was measured in many different ways. And perceptively, you see that the life, when you look back in time and reflection on life, some incident allows you a clear picture of the life that you've lived for a moment. You see time where somehow you can shift 30 years, 20 years, 5 years, 5 minutes. You can fly over the space. It's not a literal lifetime. At the same time that you had literal time going on in your life, you've also had creative time going on in your life.
Yeah.
And an incident can send you to what looks like it's back to creative time, but it's coexisting with you. The past that you've lived is not past in you, it is present in memory. And so somehow memory sees more spatial time
Mm-hmm.
than the literalization of time around gravity and a literal situation.
Yeah.
Where you see then, it's like what they just did in the space flight, where you see the Earth from that space.
Mm.
Much of the problems disappear.
Right.
They'll come back when you land, but the problems are absurd when you see it from space. You just see the wondrousness of it all.
Yeah.
Hmm? But then as it comes back into gravity zone, it literalizes.
Hmm.
So when you are in space looking at it, you are space. Your
Yeah.
identity, your identity is really secondary. You're seeing it from outer space, looking at the story.
Yeah.
But then when you come back to the literalization of Earth, to gravity time, the story is the reality.
Yeah.
But when you see it from the cosmos is the reality. And you see the spirituality of life is right there in plain sight.
Hmm.
It's not a future event. It's waiting to be perceived. But it's coexisting.
Hmm.
And so I say that the navigation that you're doing around attraction, and when attraction becomes anger, and when love becomes hate, and when this and you see that they were inherently in the situation, but that you added time and space to it,
Yeah.
you are in your own movie.
Hmm.
Something about being in your own movie or making a movie, you want it to be a really genuine creative act.
Yeah.
Hmm? And so that's why you select people or friends to be on board with you in the creative act, coming from a similar feeling. So I feel that we have, each of us here have made our life around this energy.
Yeah.
And a lot of the struggles in attempting to live a literal life, while much of our life has been a creative one, hasn't been completely a fault. The attempt to literalize our lives into identity is not true.
Mm.
Somehow, the relationship, the love affair, the experience is a creative act, not a literal one. And we protect it from being possessed.
Mm.
We're ensuring that somehow the life and the things that we're caring for and the people we're caring for has a freedom in it to find its life, to find its voice.
Mm-hmm.
So we are protecting that in those we're caring for. So in some sense, the attraction to you was more of an attraction also to the creative dimension of you,
Yeah.
not to literally you. So that may
Yeah.
be a challenge, because somehow in your intimacy, it's a creative act, not a fixed act or something, but that the people are free to express themselves in it.
Yeah.
And that freedom is not licensed behavior. Its freedom is caring again for the energy or caring for the creative expression.
Right.
And so you're also doing that in the marriage. You're caring for the creative expression. And if it leaves, it leaves.
Yeah.
Not as a fault. That's a natural thing. There's a hey baby waiting in there. And it's usually an absence or in memory where you see your own life. And you also understand that something must happen for you to have a peep of your own existence. But a peep of your own existence transforms your relationship to it. Where there's a genuineness that comes in your perceptive eye.
Yeah.
That somehow it has a power when it's true.
Right.
And I liken that also to what I say. There is then a conscious prayer that is going on that I remember as younger people, we started to do that. There was a Russian Orthodox Christian prayer that they said you said all the time. And then the mantras that we first did, you did all the time through your nose, through your mind with the words.
Yeah.
Singing kind of subtle songs, the mantra, a string of mantra, and a story. But let's say there was a premise of a natural life was a prayer itself. And that there would be moments of intuitional prayer, which was not asking for something, but was more sharing a mystery. It then literal. Are we still on here, or because it looks frozen? Yeah. So it literalizes prayer asking for something, but I would say prayer starts to resemble breathing out and breathing in. That the body and the being is a kind of prayer in their dialogue all the time. And that living and dying are always in the story. And that when one is touched in any way, it's because they got a glimpse of the living and dying process. Even if they saw a work of art that touched them, there was a glimpse of something else that's hidden, that touched you. When it's touched, it awakens a dormant dimension. So I feel that you are representing to these folks the energy or feeling. And I feel that that's what you shared with John. And when it literalized into a job or whatever, then it did what it should do. We are not a job in relationship to each other. You understand? Anything that we're doing in relationship to each other is because we're into it.
Yeah.
And if in fact you're doing it because there's a gun to the head kind of scenario, we don't do slavery well. So
True.
once it becomes a kind of slavery, it's starting to, I don't even know that we have to do anything about it. Some event is starting to happen that will shift the plane of it. And I say, why? I say, because part of the life in the energy is that you also exude an energy.
Hmm.
And in some way, just by being in that. And so somehow the relationship to you, who is that?
Probably Urja. Yep.
Oh, Urja. Hi, Urja. We were talking about you for a while. She can't hear yet, huh? Yeah. So then is that okay? Life,
Yeah.
life as a literal you and life as a creative you. And so there are some friendships that you share where the creative you is in fact the basis of the friendship.
Yeah.
And so there are feelings that happen when you have a creative relationship. And if you lose the thread of the creative relationship, you experience the loss.
Yeah.
How are you, Urja? Urja, can you hear?
Yes, I can, Danny. Yeah, I had trouble getting on.
Yeah. Well, that's happening here also.
Mhm.
Are you okay?
Yes, thank you. And you?
Wow.
Okay.
Everyone left here that was visiting.
Ah,
I got a call from some friends who were in trouble physically or whatever, but we got to share dying. In fact, we got for a moment to share not being in the body any longer, but looking at the life from that the hanging out was actually not being in the body any longer, but looking at the body's circumstance, the situation in the story. And then it was kind of wishful thinking because you then went back in the body and said, okay, what would you wish for this body? And we wished 3 more years to play with. And to come back into the place from that feeling.
mm, mm,
And you see the nature of the relationships or whatever, then you start to see that it has been a creative life. But you come back in from, we would talk, what would be kind of naive, but we were in the space of since we've had cancers and this and that, and we're in that space. So then we're looking at it from dying, and you see time differently and space differently. And then you say, okay, what would you like if you're hanging out there now? And so then we say, well, we'd like to buy some creative time. And so then a lot of the actions will come are not so fearful or gun to your head, but they're creative actions. Should you or shouldn't you, whatever. But basically, so then there was a kind of sentiment that we shared of creative time, that we were in a similar space.
mhm.
And that it had a normalcy to it or a naturalness, even though we may pick up on it existentially. But existentialism is an aspect of having a life experience. So then you see from the place of where we are now, from my perspective, and as I was talking to a person who's passing also, then a shared experience. And so then you say, okay, we created time, but you also then had a conversation with one's own body, not as a stranger, but that somehow there was an agreement with the body, not a forced agreement, but that somehow it would be almost as if you were going with a partner on a trip and there was an agreement on the trip in a way, so that it was mutual. Somehow there is a connection in the body where it's mutual, that there's an agreement. I'm not saying agreement like a contract or a landlord or anything like that, but there's a creative, hey baby, do you want to do this thing? That kind of conversation also applies to one's body that one is in. A real hey baby about it. That doesn't literalize it so much as has an agreement to have this experience. And this created time then we then agree to is creative time, that there are certain experiences that we want to be healthy enough to experience. And health doesn't mean, again, running 10 miles or doing this or being in a playing football. Health means the ability to be deeply, deeply creative in your own existence.
I like that.
And to have the kind of conversations with your body that you then find out that you can, that there is no permanence. When you have that respect for it, you are then looking at what is happening to you from another place. And so I feel that healing doesn't mean what they mean out there in the literal world. Healing is so that you can live your life deeply. It may mean running a mile, it may not be, but that is not the measure. The measure is, can you live your life deeply? And if the need for active is there, but then active is no longer a gun to your head or a pressure this or extended life, you are coming from a clear space in yourself.
Mm.
And so therefore time has changed in terms of your life. When you're looking out of it, you're then looking at the life from a creative lens. And looking at your life from a creative lens is that you want to be present enough for the whole experience to have taken place. Time is an aspect of that, but it is not the dominant factor in it. So I feel that the perceptive sense of something shifts the relationship to the body that one has been living in, to a shared space from a deeper place.
Mm.
That the life itself has been a spiritual act. And that somehow you had to have the experience and a kind of not knowledge of it, but to have a journey in your life to find the very thing that's in you.
Mm.
And there's an event that causes a reflection so deeply that it awakens that dimension for you to see. But the dimension was always there. The thing that we're searching for in time has been parallel to us all along.
Mm.
And so the search had a dimension of running away from it to some degree. But an event would happen in the exploration that would cause soul searching. It couldn't be answered by regular approaches to it.
Yeah.
Because in one sense, even though psychologically it was disturbing, in one sense it was not a flaw, it was a creative act of living a life. You become aware that you're living a life. But when I'm kidding around, and the other days when I say an angel that inhabits us, the angel doesn't come from the motive of continuity. It comes from the experience,
Mm.
to experience what it means to be alive, to have the experience. And when you're having a child, you are giving the experience. You are caring for that experience of being alive, to have a life, to experience being alive.
Mm.
And so you see the journey aspect of it. And the journey aspect of it, time has a different factor to it. So it was as if we were lying together, dying while we were living, and saying, okay, what would you like?
Mm.
And it can be as dumb as this or as dumb as that, but you understand, since the journey we've been on has been this unfolding, you see there is a relationship to the unknown, to the unseen, there's an event waiting in plain sight. And the challenge in this one is that somehow it has a genuineness to it. And it's not the truth of strictness like that, or it is in fact the truth of a creative sense or something. It frees the story. It goes from history to mystery. And I feel that I'm sharing that very deeply now with the everyday life. And when you all have come here, we were kind of sharing a mystery history in the dopiest way. But actually we were sharing that. And I think that some element of that then is imparted in the circumstance. So what you're finding, I think, when you go home is that somehow it has to be true.
Yeah.
And it's not laid out for you like some kind of seminar. It must be perceived.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are you okay then, Urja? I'll see you Sunday. Did your girl go back?
She's visiting her father for a week in New York State. He has a house on the lake, so
Oh,
it's
yeah.
not bad.
Yeah, so then she goes back to Amsterdam?
Yes. Yeah, and she had to give up her apartment, so she's in a very precarious situation. But she's juicy.
Does she still want to live there in Europe?
It looks like, yes. Yeah.
Okay, it seems okay. Mhm.
Yeah.
In fact, we're all pretty much precarious. I would say,
Yes. Yes.
you know. But
Uh,
she's still into it. Hmm?
very much, yes.
Yeah. Okay. You're okay, Kai?
Yes.
And I'm glad you made it back from California. And now you tested and you're okay.
I don't know. I had to get a test for the Dr. Joe retreat, so
Well,
I'm supposed to leave for that on Friday.
yeah, Janet
hung.
got a test then at that time, and it came back okay. So it kind of validated to some extent what we were doing here, where everybody came together and spent some time. But now Kerry has opened up a doorway, so we'll see if others, Hillary or others, come up with anything. And maybe I'll take a test, but you say it was just a small thing up your nose, then it's no problem if you do it yourself.
Yeah, the take-home
That's-
test is pretty simple.
Yeah.
That's how they did it at CVS here. They just let you put it up your nose yourself, which is, I think, much nicer.
Yeah. I think so. No, I understand. Not all the ways. I mean, I still have to be me, so I can't just say I don't do this and I don't do that. But privately, I have more friendships with medical guys than I have usage of their going in there. So I haven't probably had a checkup in years now, even though I've had the cancers and everything like that, except I do have to go and get that test. But now, because the last test was pretty good, it was like a year later,
Hmm,
6 months.
okay.
So then, and there is something in that test that I do like. It does show me what it looks like inside in one sense, even though it is creepy. And then I was mentioning to Marty, I said, I wonder, since I don't get the penicillin, I may have gotten an infection every now and then from that, which is, so let's see how it sneaks up on you. But as I said, kidding around when we opened up, it'll come from something dumber than a major thing, I think. You don't want it to be a fall in, Urja, to be a fall in your toilet?
I would rather not. I would rather fall on the couch or
Well, it was something interesting in the papers here today. They've just passed the law that the doctors are now legally able to advise you about dying here, and that they can treat you or give you, if they feel that you're passing away, they can give you then drugs to pass away to lessen the pain.
Wow.
So they freed that. So they, on the front page today, they had a woman,
wow.
whose sisters had a similar cancer. And one went through such pain and aggravation and treatment and going crazy that the other sister, when it came to her, said that no way is she going to do that and lose it. So then basically they said that, okay, they agreed to help her die. And there was a little potion that they gave her, the bitter potion, black liquid that she drank. And about an hour later, she just passed peacefully away.
Wow.
She said that she felt so good for her sister passing away after seeing what the other sister went through, that they wouldn't let her pass away. So it does what Urja does. But Urja, now you're not active any longer. Are you with the doula?
I've never been really associated literally with it.
But you did get a license, didn't you? You took a test or something, or you got no?
No, I paid and then I realized the traveling was going to be too much, and it was like it was impossible to do.
Yeah.
So I read all the books, I did all the writing.
And that How We Die is good. He's a good guy, and he describes it pretty sweetly and simply, as to what's taking place. But independent of that, it's that the doula was a person who recognized that dying and living were in the story.
Yes.
And in that recognition, they shared that feeling immediately with the person who was in that space, because they recognized through the other that they were in that space also. They were sharing a life. So the doula then represented a shared life that literally family didn't share, or no one really shared with you, but the doula shared the mutual perception of the living and dying process.
Mm.
And so it didn't interfere when interfering would disturb it, or didn't lie, was a friend that shared perspective, but didn't tell it what to do or order it around, because it didn't see death as a threat. And it didn't see dying as a threat. So what the doula did was, even though it had some medical knowledge, some sensual knowledge, the doula was a shared experience from a deeper space.
Yeah.
So the doula meant that was the focus. Just like the doula meant midwife, that the focus was birth. Even though you may laugh with the people in the room and this and that, the doula who went in the room was focused on the life process. And that was the birth was kind of pure from your perspective. And also the death was the observer and the caretaker around the observation. But no one else in the room was required to do what the doula had to do in the midwife.
Mm.
The midwife had to reconcile all the forces in the room, but then focus on what was happening. A life was entering into the place. And then the doula is then also focusing on a life leaving the place. And there's something pure in that. You get a chance to see from the doula's perspective, birth and death, and you see the purity of it entering into a body. And how do you know it's pure? Because you have to go in and take it out and shift it around and bring it in. Something that no one else in the room is doing is that you're having a relationship with its breathing, with its health, what is happening, with what the mother's going through, a shared experience. The doula is sharing an experience. And that's the formative life and the formative passing. And these are elements that generally the literalness of the people even in the room are unaware of the level that it's on.
Mm.
But somehow the doula is related to another level of the situation that has an element of do no harm in it.
Yes.
But the do no harm is not an order or an instruction. It's a perception that something dear is happening. And so others are free to have reactions or this or whatever in the situation, but the doula is there for the experience or present. The presence alone is what it's about. And I think that's what the friendship is in the life, is the presence is the friendship. Okay, so shall we do this 3 years with Marty too, or do you want to stick with the 1 year? Well, do you want 3 more years of hanging out there, or you wanted to maybe go to Hawaii for a while?
No, that going to Hawaii is not an urgency. This moment is urgent.
We'll play with creative time, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, and Kerry, it's okay then?
Yeah, but I might go to Hawaii.
You have family there, and well, we may also. Shall we all go there?
Yeah, sure. That'd be sweet.
Time, huh? Yeah.
Lotus really wants to go to Hawaii.
Yeah.
She wants to swim with the dolphins.
Well, you want to go where his parents are living, and you know who also is there is Wells. Remember Wells?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Wells is there, and I think Fantuzzi is there. But I know quite a few folks that are there actually. in different settings. I was there almost 45 years ago. We lived there.
Me too.
And we moved to the Big Island after there. So even Big Island, what they say, was almost wrecked with that last eruption.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was
Wow.
yeah. The place we lived in was lost. You know,
Oh.
it was really almost paradise there at the time. It rained.
Hmm.
It rained for an hour a day.
Hmm.
You bathed in rainwater, and we got all our water from rainwater. You know, so it was pretty sweet.
What part of Big Island was that?
The Big Island was not on the Hilo side.
Okay.
It was that place where the volcano. Gee, what's that neighborhood there? It was pretty hippie.
Uh-huh.
But what it was that it was inexpensive to rent a home
Yeah.
because people, like wealthy people, rented it out or used it only to come there. But it was always subject to the lava coming down. And
Yeah.
Oh, that's why it wasn't expensive.
yeah, no, somehow it was. We were living really primitively there, nice, you know. And then it would be about 40 miles to Hilo.
Mm.
And Hilo was like an old Western town, you know, at that time with Japanese grocers and stuff like that in it. So it was pretty sweet and
Mm.
movie like, you know. But then we had to leave and come back to America. At that time, they had Jenny's green card.
Hmm.
Her card had visa had gone, so we had to make a decision about staying or going or whatever. I was thinking at the time of going to New Zealand with her. But then when I spoke to the doctor, he said, "What are we going to do in New Zealand?" So, and then I said, "Okay, what are we going to do in New Zealand then?" Okay. So we got married then so that she can stay here. So what a weird adventure has been. From a conversation to a life
Hmm.
that just sprang out of the conversation. And it's and you assumed almost all of it. You just spiritualized where it was natural, that a spiritual life was natural, not something acquired or this or that. You did pick up refinements of it as you navigated, but you were coming from a place. And so that'll be a challenge. We'll say, Guy, when you're coming from a spiritual place in your life, and when you're literally, should you get the vaccine or should you not? It's a question when you're coming from a different place in your life, should you literalize it that way? And so for me, it's not should or shouldn't. It's when if it speaks to you in relationship to the work that you're doing and your relationship to others. So it's not so much a law or a force or anything like that, but it still has to speak to you. Naively or other, because you're assuming a form. And I think that once you see that, in fact, your life is a journey, and that it had not only a literalization of survival, but the journey also had dimensions, creative dimensions to it. Then you see that your presence creates a challenge creatively. And it also creates a challenge when it literalizes, when people are fixed in their roles. There is a kind of sense that one is born free, not as a license, but to find one's voice.
Mhm.
And that voice is who you are.
Mhm.
Okay, namaste. I'll see,
Namaste.
maybe I'll see some of you tomorrow night or Sunday. Take care.
Namaste, Danny.
I hope everyone's okay. Was
Thank
anyone
you.
else on today or?
Jimmy and Sophia and Michael Bravo all said hi or something.
Okay, hi to everyone. And it's been, I hope everything is okay for everyone. Okay, meaning not stress-free or pressure-free, but that the living force is there and you kind of are with it. And I think somehow in our speaking with each other or hanging out, it does introduce that flow. in the life.
Yeah. That's,
So I think that the hurt that one experiences over incidents that happen is genuine hurt, not to be gotten rid of or made small of or shifted, but to be perceived, that to experience what it means to be human deeply, in all aspects of it, is the journey, I feel.
yeah.
And I think that none of us will be, could be deeply satisfied with a superficial happy. The happy kind of has to be true also, isn't that weird? It can't just be
Yeah.
just because you're privileged or something like that. So the happy kind of is like that, like you're happy with the artwork that you've put together.
Mm.
Mhm.
So there's a depth to it. And I feel that as we meet, we realize our life has that dimension to it. And that's how we're connecting. Okay, I'll see you again. Take care.
Thanks, Danny.
Thank
Hi,
you.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Hope you feel better, Carrie.
Thanks, Kai.
Mm.
Oh,